Welcome to the first part of Cloud Consultancy's Aero Workflow Manager Getting Started series. In this first video, we're going to show you how to get Aero installed and set up to get your company going. First, I want to talk to you about, for those of you who've not installed Aero, it's something that you install from Method's App Store. So within your Method account, you'll want to navigate to the Customize tab, and there's a tab link screen called My Account. And if you scroll down, you'll see a list of the apps available for Method, and there you'll find Aero. It will give you instructions on how to add the app. There's an option that will ask how you want to add the app, and we suggest adding it as a new tab group, and I believe that is the default suggestion on screen. So once you click to add the app, all the screens will copy over, and that will take a period of time. So right now we're going to take a look at the Setup tab. This is where you can set some global preferences for your whole company, and that will help speed up creating and performing tasks in Aero. At the top are some company settings that are going to act as defaults when you create new tasks. And I just want to mention that all of these titles with the dotted underline are going to pop up a little description when you mouse over them. So first is the option to set up your company, indicate what your company is. When you're doing some internal work in Aero, there will be a link to set something as My Company, and that'll automatically set it as not billable and fill in your firm's information. So most people don't have their company already set up as a customer, but it is helpful to do this because in general you do have some sort of internal work that you're going to be doing, either meetings or social media or just general non-client related email, and you'll want to have your company as the customer for those activities. If you're not already on your customer list, you can add yourself as a new customer at the top. And you do want to be set up as a customer rather than a vendor or employee or other. So next down we have the default billable status. You'll want to set this based on whether most of your work is billed on an hourly rate or on a fixed fee rate. This is going to be the default when you create a new activity, but it can always be changed on any individual activity that you create. Similarly, the hourly billable rate is going to automatically populate for any billable activities, but it can be changed as needed. It's just there as a default if there is a default rate you use. Next down we have this checkbox, Notify Manager at Checkout, and the opportunity to put in a manager's email. This makes it so that at the end of the day your staff will have a checkout button at the bottom of their work assignment screen, and they can use this button to send a summary of their work to their manager. This gives the manager a quick look at what work has been completed or put on hold, and gives them the opportunity to offer any additional resources if necessary, or see what needs to happen to get those tasks that have been deferred completed. If you have this box checked, that button will show up. If you don't check it, the checkout button will not appear on your work assignment screen, but managers can still keep track of everything from the Manage tab. And then finally, you can set your default payroll item if you use QuickBooks Desktop Payroll. If you don't use it, then just don't even check this box. Then over on the right here, we have a few checkboxes for some global features. So the very first one is whether or not you want to require a timer. If this is checked when your staff accept an activity on the work assignment screen, they'll at first only see the timer on the screen. They won't see the steps or the shortcuts or any of the links to resources that you have. Once they hit play, all of the steps will show up. They'll have all of the information about the activity and shortcuts, etc. Those will all be available to them, but only once they hit the play button. This is really helpful in making sure that you're really capturing all the time that your staff are putting into an activity. All the time of reading the instructions and doing that they might not necessarily think that they should be recording their time for. And if you're not so concerned about time tracking, you can uncheck this box to see all of the resources as soon as you open the task. So next down is whether your time tracking entries are going to wait for sync approval. If you check this, managers will need to review all of the time tracking entries created by your staff before it will sync to QuickBooks. And this just gives you kind of another level of oversight. So it's something you can decide whether your company wants to do or not. Next is whether or not new activities that your staff create have to be approved by a manager before they'll show up on the work assignment screen. This is helpful in preventing scope creep. Clients might ask for more reports or some customization or something, and while your staff can create those activities, they won't be able to work on them until a manager goes through and ensures that they're part of the current scope of work, or maybe that'll need to be revisited with the client before it can be done. And then finally, you can choose whether or not you want to require a class when creating tasks. Like in QuickBooks, you can use classes, and it will prompt you to enter a class when saving a new activity if you haven't entered that in. Right, so that's the company settings. Down here we can look at these tabs on the bottom for a few more shortcuts and resources. The first one that shows up is the email templates, and these are used for various shortcuts that are going to be available within an activity. We've included several in Aero, which you can edit over on the email templates screen. And we've left a space on all of them to fill in your company info and whether you have some signature that you want or your logo. So you can fill in all of those and leave the rest as they are if you want. If you want to edit them, you can go ahead and do that. We do recommend, though, if you're editing one of these default templates, that you actually go down to more actions and duplicate the template rather than just editing it. This just helps to make sure that the original is there in case anything goes wrong. You can always save that and create a new template named whatever you want, with whatever you want to put in here. And then back on this preferences screen, you can choose which template you want to use for each of the shortcuts, and that's where you can choose your custom templates that you've created. If there's one of these shortcuts that your company doesn't need, say if you don't do any payroll and this net paychecks shortcut sends an email telling the client what the total amount of paychecks you just processed were. If you don't need that, you can just delete everything out of the box, and then when you go to your shortcuts on your work assignment screen, that's just not going to show up at all. That won't show up for any of your staff. So we'll go back and actually put that in. And I'm going to actually save at this point. Next, you have the opportunity to link your method activity types to your QuickBooks service items. Aero comes with some defaults that you can edit to reflect how your company does business. You can also mark on the right if you don't need an activity type active anymore. You can just unclick its box. And then this is a little different than the rest of the page. We saved previously to record our changes. But for any of these grids that you'll see all over Aero, and they're actually a method feature that you'll see all over method, they're a separate entity than the page as a whole. So this save button isn't able to save what happens on this grid. That's why we have this update button here, which allows you to save any changes you made. I'm going to change that back. And if you need to add a new activity rather than just edit one, you can go ahead and add a new activity type at the bottom, and that'll bring up the screen where you can select everything for the activity. Now on the next tab, you can manage your client teams. Teams are a great way to manage sensitive client information. You can assign certain staff members to a team and they'll have access to the client's information, passwords, anything like that. Other staff members can work on activities for the client if you have some administrative work like scanning or filing, but they won't have access to any of that sensitive information. So on the left is a grid showing the existing teams on your company, and on the right you can select which team the user is on. So you just select them from the drop-down menu and then select which company's teams they're on. So right now, by default, this grid is only going to show us the first 10 records of any of our clients. And since this is just a demo account, we don't have more than that. If you do have more and you want to be able to see the whole list, you just need to hit this plus button to add more rows, and you can hit that until you have all of your clients showing. And if you have somebody who's going to be on the team for every single client, you can just check this box at the top to the add selected user to all of the selected companies. Then the next tab, we have roles. The roles are used for tracking how much time staff are spending on each aspect of their job. This is a good way to monitor your staffing needs and determine when you need to hire personnel dedicated to a certain role. If you have someone who's working both as your AP clerk and your marketing person, and you're seeing that they're spending more and more time on marketing, it might be time to have someone who's dedicated to marketing, keeping track like that. And then next over is contacts. Since Method is designed as a CRM and Aero is an app for Method, you can have a number of contacts for each customer. And when you're creating an activity, it's assigned to a specific contact rather than the customer itself. So this allows you to exclude contacts that you don't want your staff to use when creating an activity. If you maybe have your client's insurance agent or their lawyer or anything like that, where you want to have their information down in your CRM, but you don't necessarily want to be using them as a contact for any of your work for the client. You can just select anyone you want to exclude and go ahead and click to exclude them. There are also some other buttons down here. You can choose to exclude all leads, so that's anyone you haven't converted to a customer yet. You can exclude. You can exclude all vendors. And then you can also, conversely, select a few and include those selected. So if you're going to exclude all vendors except for a few that you know that you do want, you could first exclude them all and then include the few that you know you want, just to save time. Finally, the Users tab lets you define your users as partners or managers. That just lets you track work done by each, and also gives a little bit of permissions, but most of the permissions are going to be managed over on the Customize tab up here under the user screen. So hopefully we've been updating our grids as we go along and we've got all of our progress saved. And then we can go over and start on this work tab to actually start performing some tasks.